Have you ever wondered about all the ways you can make money from recorded music? What about songwriting? How do songwriters make money? Today we're going to try to demystify some of the complexity of how exactly money is made in music. It's complicated, but I made a cool chart and I can't wait to show it to you. My name is Matt Crumpton. I am an attorney. I've been practicing music law as well as franchise law and business law for over 10 years. And what I want to do today is just share with you a chart that I made that breaks down all the different ways that you can make money as either an artist or a songwriter. Okay, so first, let's start out with just the big overall point that is important to know. And that is the difference between a composition and the master sound recording. So on one hand, you have the composition or the publishing or the songwriting, and that's the song itself. So that's the underlying piece of art. It's the words and lyrics to the song. Then you have the sound recording, also known as the master. And the sound recording is one specific version of the composition. So for example, Bob Dylan wrote All Along the Watchtower, but when Jimi Hendrix covered Dylan's version of All Along the Watchtower, he had to pay Dylan for the songwriting. Dylan still owns the composition. Jimi Hendrix owns the master for his version. When Dave Matthews Band covers All Along the Watchtower, Bob Dylan's still getting paid for the composition. Dave Matthews Band owns their version of their specific sound recording. So the underlying composition is always owned by the original songwriter or songwriters, and the sound recording is owned by the artist or the record label if they transfer it. Just like with the publishing is owned by your publishing company partially if you transfer it, but that's a whole other bag of things. We'll get into that another time. So in summary, the master sound recording is everything that is on the left-hand column on this chart. And the composition or publishing, songwriting, all the same thing, that covers everything that's on the column on the right. So we're gonna go point by point through each of these different types of revenue and talk about exactly how they work. Okay, so we're gonna start out with digital downloads. So this is digital downloads, not streaming, this is actually downloads. So how does that work on the master side? The master recording owner for a digital download is gonna get whatever deal they have in place with their distributor who's selling it. Usually the deal is about 70% of the overall retail price for the download. That's what's going to be passed on to the master owner, but it varies depending on what the agreement is. But the master recording owner is always going to have to, not always, I'll get to an exception in a second here. Generally, the master sound recording owner is always going to have to pay for the right to record the song. Now, if the master owner is also the songwriter, then all the money goes to the same pocket anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But if you're covering someone else's song, which requires you to actually get a separate license we're not going to talk about today, you have to make sure that you're paying them the 9.1 cent statutory rate every time a song is downloaded. So actually your net pay, let's say you get 70 cents, that would mean you're going to be right around 61 cents for each download. But again, that totally varies and it's by agreement. Okay, the next one, let's go to physical sales. So we're talking about, your vinyl records are a big one now. Some people still do CDs, cassettes, that's kind of hipster, maybe that exists, 8-track tapes, whatever it is. Physical media. Physical media is pretty much exactly the same as digital downloads, except you're paying, instead of getting 70% of the money from a distributor, it's just whatever deal you can set up with whoever's selling your physical media. You know what I mean? So let's say you go to a record store and you got vinyls and you have a deal with the record store. It's just whatever deal you can negotiate with them, that's how much you're gonna get. So you have to obviously pay yourself back for the cost of the physical media that you got, and also you have to pay whoever's selling the retail whatever agreement you came to with them. And then also on the songwriter side, the songwriter is going to get 9.1 cents. Okay, so subtract whatever the master sound recording owner gets, So go ahead and subtract 9.1 cents from whatever the master sound recording owner gets. That goes to the composition owner. Okay, the next one is really big today, very important, streaming, okay? So the thing about streaming is, streaming payments cover both a mechanical license and the public performance right. So we'll talk about the public performance right here in just a second. But the point is, if you're an artist and you're putting out a song on a streaming platform, you do not have to worry about paying 9.1 cents or any amount to the songwriter directly. Instead, the streaming organizations pay the songwriter directly. Okay, so we'll put up on the screen here the different rates of the different streaming platforms. Some of those are pretty interesting. Spotify varies, so it's between 1/3 of a cent to 0.8 of a cent. However, the 0.8 of a cent is for major labels, and the 1/3 of a cent per stream is for your indie acts, okay? So you're getting 1/3 of a cent every time a song is played on Spotify. Then Amazon is at 0.004 per stream. Then you have Apple at 0.005 per stream. And finally, SoundCloud is 0.002 per stream, not great. And it's only for their partners, so not everyone that puts content on their platform. So again, that is the master side. Now, when you go over to the songwriter publishing composition column here, you'll see that they're not paid by the master sound recording owner. Instead, they're paid directly from the streaming services. And basically, the streaming services have to pay a different percentage. It's at like 13 now, it goes up to 15, then they have to renegotiate it. But you have to pay a certain percentage of all the revenues of the streaming companies directly to songwriters. So that's how it works. They're still working on that today, but again, the songwriter gets about 13% of all of the revenue of the streaming company. How much is that? There's really no way to know. So all you can do is try to find articles and figure it out, because it's always changing. The next one we're going to cover is terrestrial radio. So how much money do you get if you get played on FM radio, right? That was the big dream, you know, back in the day, the wonders with that thing you do, they get played on the radio. It's a big moment, you know, it used to be a really big moment in an artist's life to get played on the radio. So here's the answer. If you are the sound recording owner, you get zero. You get squat in America. Sound recording owners get nothing. And the reason for that has to do with basically a compromise that was made between the recording industry and the radio broadcast industry. And the idea was, well, sound recording owners are going to get to promote their song with free airplay on the radio. Why should we play them? Why should we pay them? They're going to get paid when people buy their album, right? So that's the fact of sound recording owners not being paid today is underpinned with that assumption, which is no longer correct. On the publishing, songwriting side, this is where all the money is, okay? So the way it works is the radio stations pay a percentage of their overall revenue to the different performing rights organizations to get a blanket license. So they're gonna pay ASCAP, CSAC, BMI. And whenever they play songs, they send the data. It used to be cue sheets, now it's digital, but they send the information to the performing rights organizations so that they can pay the artists based on, you know, how many spends they had. And it's a complex formula, but the main message here is that you really don't know. It's mailbox money, and it just goes to the writers. So think about the implications of this if you're in a band. If you're in a band and you have, let's say the singer writes all the songs and the other people in the band don't write at all, that means if the band has a hit record and the singer really has 100% ownership, everyone else in the band gets literally nothing that didn't write the song when it's played on the radio, and the lead singer, the person that wrote the song may get, several $100,000. So something to consider. All the money for terrestrial radio is on the writer side, not the sound recording side. Okay, let's move on now to satellite radio and digital cable music channels. Okay, really specific there, but this is mostly satellite radio in this category. On the sound recording side, these master owners do get paid for satellite radio. and that is through a company called Sound Exchange. And it's actually a little bit more egalitarian than some of the other pay structures. 50% of the payment goes to the record label, and if you don't have a record label, then it just goes to the artist. 45% goes to the featured artist, which is basically people who are in the band. And then 5% of all the revenues goes to non-featured artists, which are session players who are not in the band, background vocalists, engineers, producers, all that kind of fun stuff. So there's actually opportunities for people who are not the artists to get paid for satellite radio. That is on the sound recording side. On the composition side, just like terrestrial radio, the owners of the compositions, the songwriters, they are going to get paid a percentage of the revenues of Sirius XM. And that number is, it's really impossible to peg down, and it's totally variable, just based on the subscriptions and the overall revenues that they have. So that is how songwriting money works on satellite radio. Okay, let's talk about video. All right, so first, to even be able to put a song to a video or to synchronize a song with a video, you have to get 2 licenses first before you do anything else, okay? And for a sound recording, that's called a master use license. And for the song, for the composition, it's called a synchronization license. A lot of times these are in the same document. It'll say master use and synchronization, but that's not the case if you have different owners of those rights. How much do you get paid for your master use and sync license? On the front end, the answer is it might be nothing. It might be $1. Or if you're an established artist and it's, a big placement in a movie, maybe it's like the theme song for a movie, it might be, $500,000. Pretty much it's just based on leverage and negotiating power. Okay, so how do you make money from having your songs in a TV show? And the answer is you might get a little bit of money on the front end, but the front end is just you giving permission to use your song. The real money is typically going to be on the back end, which is the amount of money that you make after it is shown on broadcast television or on cable. And the performance rights organizations, the PROs that we talked about earlier, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, they're gonna pay you for that, and it's called back-end money. It's mailbox money, right? So the more people who are watching it and the longer that the song is featured, the more times the song is played, all those things contribute to what the overall amount of money you're gonna make from a placement will be. And then just quickly on movie theaters, there is no public performance right on movie theaters. So there's an exemption for both the sound recording and songwriters. But when that movie is then shown on broadcast TV, then the ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, PRO, mailbox money rules apply. Last thing is sheet music, okay? So the sound recording owner gets nothing on the sheet music, that makes sense. And the owner of the composition gets whatever they can make from it. There's no specific rule, it's just by contract. How much are people willing to pay you for your sheet music? If it's more than it cost you to produce the sheet music, then that's how much profit you'll have. So those are the major ways that you can make money in recorded music. The most important thing to remember is that there's a big difference between the sound recording, which is one specific version of the song, the things in the left column, and the composition itself, which is the song. So the songwriters are gonna get paid much more whenever there's something on terrestrial radio or on broadcast television where there's a synchronization right. However, the master owners are gonna get more money when it comes to streaming and physical medium sales. And also, they're gonna get paid fairly well on satellite radio. So just understanding how those different things work is really important. If you're in a band, it's important to just think through what are the scenarios where, if you have a big song hit, are there gonna be hurt feelings in the band if only, 1 or 2 people in the band participate in that. So we talked about all the different ways you can make money with recorded music or with songwriting. And the main thing to remember is that the sound recording is totally different from the composition, and they're paid differently. So familiarize yourself with this chart and how the different rights are paid, and you'll be in better shape than most musicians are these days. As always, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me, Matt at crumptonlegal.com. Thanks, and I'll talk to you soon.